Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the truly multifaceted identity of Hagar. She's this ancient figure who is somehow simultaneously understood as a slave, a mother of nations, a banished outcast, and even a modern feminist icon. I mean, it's incredibly rare to find a single historical or religious figure who carries so much weight across completely different cultures and eras. So, throughout this explainer, we're going to dig into the source texts and modern interpretations to see exactly how her story has evolved and ultimately what it means for us today.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be exploring this complex figure through 5 distinct prisms. We'll start with the Maid in the Desert, then look at her role as a revered Islamic matriarch, the concept of the God who sees, some lessons from the wilderness, and finally, her status as a symbol of the marginalized.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Maid in the Desert, the Genesis narrative.
To get started, let's look at the core timeline of her life according to the biblical text. Hagar is introduced as an Egyptian maidservant to Sarai, who we later know is Sarah, the wife of Abraham. Now, because Sarah is unable to have children and has been waiting a long 10 years for God's promise of a child, she actually offers Hagar to her husband as a surrogate. So at age 86, Abraham has a son, Ishmael, with Hagar. But as you might guess, things get complicated. Years later, Sarah finally has her own son, Isaac. During a celebration for Isaac's weaning, all this built-up tension and jealousy just peaks. Sarah demands that Hagar and Ishmael be cast out so Ishmael won't share the inheritance. Abraham is pretty distressed by this, but guided by God, he sends them away with literally just some bread and water into the harsh, unforgiving wilderness of Beersheba.
Which brings us to Section 2, a revered Islamic matriarch, Hagar's journey.
Now, this is where things get really fascinating. We're looking at a classic Rashomon effect here, where the exact same character is viewed very differently depending on the text you're reading. In the biblical narrative we just talked about, she's an outcast bondswoman, banished largely due to human jealousy, and left to wander aimlessly. But if you look at Islamic traditions, including the stories of the prophets, Hagar is actually a royal princess of Egypt given to Abraham. And more importantly, she isn't exiled at all. Instead, God specifically commands Abraham to settle her and her infant son in the barren valley of Mecca. In this account, Hagar is a matriarch of profound faith who willingly accepts this divine task, knowing God absolutely won't abandon them.
So, the crucial turning point in this tradition is her desperate search for survival. In the Islamic narrative, when their water inevitably runs out, Hagar doesn't just sit down and give up. She's panicking for her thirsty child, so she runs back and forth between 2 hills, Safa and Marwa, 7 times, desperately searching for help or water. Finally, an angel appears and causes a miraculous spring to literally burst from the desert ground. This is the famous Zamzam well. And this incredible act of maternal desperation and ultimate faith is so significant that millions of Muslims reenact her exact footsteps today during the Hajj pilgrimage. Just think about that. Her personal struggle is literally woven into the physical practice of one of the world's largest religious gatherings.
Moving right along to Section 3, the God who sees, a pastoral symbol.
Okay, so going back to the biblical account for a moment, when Hagar first flees from Sarah's harsh treatment, even before Ishmael is born, she meets an angel at a spring. After this encounter, where she's promised a huge multitude of descendants, she actually gives God a name. She calls him El Roy, which translates to the God who sees me. Now, it's an absolutely fascinating detail that this foreign, marginalized, abused servant was the very first person in the entire Bible to give God a name. In a culture that essentially viewed her as a nameless commodity, really just an incubator for someone else's child, she recognized that the divine actually saw her true individual value.
And this pastoral perspective is beautifully captured by Vietnamese Christian radio broadcasts, which movingly compare her to a modern, single mother completely isolated in a foreign land. As one pastor puts it, she fled into the wilderness, staring at the running streams, not having a clue where her life would drift. And crucially, she didn't even have a cell phone to call for help. It's a surprisingly relatable, modern analogy, right? It really highlights her extreme vulnerability. Yet the core message of these sermons is that just as God watched over this ancient, isolated single mother, he continues to comfort the vulnerable, the fatherless, and the alone today.
Let's transition into Section 4, Lessons from the Wilderness, Practical Takeaways.
Now, these same sermons are quick to point out that Hagar wasn't flawless. When she first became pregnant, she grew proud and actually despised Sarah, her mistress. So this serves as a really practical warning against the danger of arrogance creeping in when we achieve a little success or status. Furthermore, when things got tough, her immediate instinct was to flee. One of our sources even quotes an old proverb saying that out of 36 possible strategies, running away is the best one. But remember, the angel told Hagar to go back. The big lesson here? It's a warning against simply abandoning our families, our marriages, or our communities when misunderstandings pop up. Instead, it highlights the critical need to sit down, communicate openly, and practice forgiveness, rather than just letting resentment completely destroy our relationships.
And that brings us to our final lens in Section 5, a symbol of the marginalized, modern resonance.
African-American feminist scholars like Renita J. Weems and Dolores S. Williams view Hagar as a really profound symbol of the enslaved. They draw a direct, powerful line connecting her ancient surrogacy and total lack of bodily autonomy to the history of African-American women during slavery, who were often forced to care for or bear their master's children. In fact, Weems describes Hagar's relationship with Sarah as ethnic prejudice exacerbated by economic and social exploitation. So this isn't just some ancient desert myth. For many scholars today, Hagar is the foundational lens for critiquing systemic exploitation, class divides, and even the modern ethics surrounding assisted reproduction and commercial surrogacy.
So, after examining her through the lenses of history, comparative religion, pastoral care, and modern sociology, what does Hagar mean to us today? We're left to ponder her ultimate legacy in our world right now. How exactly does a single historical figure hold all these different, heavy meanings simultaneously?
This dichotomy perfectly captures Hagar's incredible transformation in our cultural consciousness. On one side, she starts as the ultimate ancient outcast. A marginalized foreign maid, completely stripped of her agency, used for her womb, and literally banished to die with her baby in an unforgiving desert. But then on the other side, through centuries of interpretation, she's become a modern icon. She's a symbol of incredible grit and survival. She is the literal matriarch of a massive global faith and an enduring advocate and inspiration for single mothers and the oppressed everywhere. It's an absolutely stunning shift. To close out our explainer, I want to leave you with a beautiful quote drawn from our Vietnamese sources, which translates simply to, "In all things there is love." Ultimately, whether you view Hagar as an Egyptian princess, an oppressed slave, a flawed human who let pride get the best of her, or an ultimate survivor, the unifying conclusion across all these different sources is one of resilience. It tells us that even in the harshest, driest wilderness, when the water has run out and you have absolutely no one to call, we can still find enduring love, hope, and the strength to keep going. So it really begs the question, who are the Hagars in our society today, and are we doing enough to make sure they're truly seen?